Hi, good morning. I am Michael Chevy Castronov. I'm the business editor at the Gazette. I'm also the editor of Iowa Ideas Magazine. And thank you for joining us this morning here at Geometric headquarters. Lovely place. This is our second business breakfast this year. If you've been coming to our other various Gazette events, our business breakfast panels, our Her Award events, Pints and Politics, you know, we have a cornucopia. I didn't hear that word a lot anymore, right? Cornucopia. We have a cornucopia of events and various activities throughout the year. I'm just going to really briefly only talk about 3 of them right now, so we get on with the morning. Our next business breakfast will be September 12th. The topic will be workplace culture, and I don't mean just having foosball tables, and those are lovely, and slides, and those are all great things, but more talking about how you build and promote your culture for recruiting and retention, which we know is a massive issue in a state with such low unemployment, right? There are few workers and people are aging out. It's a big thing, and that's one way to do that. If you're registered here today, you will receive an email. Yes, Quinn's telling me yes. You receive an email with more details on that. Panel still to be determined, and when we get there, I'll tell you about how I was offered a job once that the incentive was that if you do well, you get to go to a dude ranch for a week. It was not a good fit. Second thing, the Gazette's 3rd annual Iowa Ideas Conference will be October 3 and 4. Once again, we're going to be at the Doubletree, downtown, that way. Last year we had 550 attendees. You really should think about coming. It's really pretty cool. This year we're going to have 11 tracks, more than 80 sessions, some 200 panelists, individual speakers. Our keynote, as you probably know by now, is going to be Tom Vilsack. He was in the office the other day. We chatted. Very nice man. He had all kinds of thoughtful things to say. Topics, tracks, panelists, all that is posted right now at thegazette.com/2019 Iowa Ideas Conference. You can buy tickets now. Registration is open. You should come. Take a look. See what's exciting. There's all kinds of stuff. Number 3, right after that, October 29th, is our 5th annual Business Awards. It will be, again, at Hotel Kirkwood. It's always a good time. You should come to that. My co-MC again this year will be Elizabeth Von Presley. She didn't sing last year. She may this year. We'll see. She's really good at that audience thing. I don't know how that happened. Please nominate a company for that. Your company, a vendor, somebody you know, somebody you work with. There were cards that are being handed out as you came in. Where to go to that website. The deadline is really soon. All right, so here we are. This is where I officially thank our community sponsor and community partner, the New Bohemian Innovation Collaborative, in this program, as well as a number of other programs, Dubuque. We work with them throughout the year. They do all kinds of things, including 1 million cups, which happens right here. Yes, Joe? And here to talk just a little bit about that is Jill Wilkins with Dubuque, and her other claim to fame, of course, is she's the event manager at Entrefest. Jill, you want to say a few things?
Yeah. I'll just project. Can people hear me in the back? Okay. Welcome to the Geometric Building and Dubuque. My name is Jill Wilkins. I'm the event director for the organization. We are a nonprofit that is actually located up on the 2nd floor of the building. In the vault co-working space, we have really 3 main areas of focus: entrepreneurship, corporate innovation, and computer science education. And within all of those focuses, we have a lot of programs and services. So I'd really encourage you to check out our website to learn a little bit more about that. Also, I will be here throughout the morning, and so please feel free to come find me afterwards if you'd like a little tour of the building or would like to learn more about what we are doing. We actually are having our first kind of official annual meeting on September 19th at Kirkwood, which would be another neat opportunity for you to come and learn a little bit about what we are doing really throughout the quarter and actually the entire state of Iowa and all those 3 areas of focus. And prior to that, I encourage you to actually come back next Wednesday and really any Wednesday throughout the summer and the year. Michael mentioned 1 Million Cups, and that is a program that is started by the Kauffman Foundation in Kansas City. We hold it every Wednesday morning. Networking starts at 8:15 with the program at 8:30. Really the idea is that 1 million cups of coffee are being consumed and drunk, and networking is happening all at the same time throughout the entire country. And then we actually listen to a different business owner, organization, business founder about either their business, a project they're working on, and then a problem that they're needing help solve. And so it's a really neat opportunity to learn about something that's happening in the community and actually really do some cool Q&A and help them out. So really excited to have you be here. Really love this partnership with the Gazette. So welcome and enjoy.
Jill, did anybody ever actually count? How do you know it's 1 million?
We're just going with that.
Okay.
I think, it's grown, so I'm guessing it's a little bit more.
2 million. 1.75 million cups, okay. All right, so this morning, other than counting coffee, we're going to talk about how cities build their core and everything that entails. How we go about that, how do we prioritize, what do we rebuild, what do we backfill, what do we infill, what do we leave for later? Like, we need to do this now, maybe we do this in 10 years, maybe this other time. How do we come to those conclusions? What I'd like to do right now is give each of our panelists to go through one at a time, tell us who you are, where you work, just your title, and a little bit about what you do there.
Thank you, Michael. I'm Scott Olson. I'm part of several different things. I'm an architect by training and continue to carry my license, even though I don't actively practice anymore. And for the last 25 plus years, I've been a commercial real estate broker at the Scopeman Companies, which is a family-owned company here in Cedar Rapids, and been thrilled to be a part of that organization. And I've had the privilege for the last 7.5 years to be a member of the Cedar Rapids City Council, representing District 4. That's the northwest quadrant, plus a portion of the southwest quadrant of the city. Also, I've been involved in downtown development for a long time, owning properties in downtown Cedar Rapids and in Marion, and had the privilege of, for the last, since 2007, I co-chair the housing working group for the Economic Alliance that's been promoting more downtown housing in the core areas of Cedar Rapids. And we'll talk about that, I'm sure, a little later on. And so I'm excited to be here because this is an opportunity to share how fortunate we are to live in this city. And you're going to hear that from here in a second, and about his great city. And so there's some interesting things going on that are national trends, not just in Cedar Rapids, but national trends that we need to respond to, which is sometimes hard for people to understand. So it's exciting to have this conversation.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rick Dickinson. I'd like to thank Michael and the Gazette for the invitation to be with you today and the host of this cool space. It's nice to be here, and it's a beautiful morning. I am the president of Greater Dubuque Development Corporation, a private nonprofit group that does 6 things. Business retention and expansion, taking care of the employers that are in our market, which we define as the MSA of Dubuque County. We do workforce solutions because we pay attention to the existing employers, and their number one concern is having the talent they need to grow and be successful. The third thing we do is national marketing, recruiting new companies to our community, and because we pay attention to the folks who are already there, I think we do a better job of recruiting new people to our market. Sustainable innovations, which requires a little definition. It's about renewable energy, so we have the largest solar array in the state in Dubuque. We capture our methane at our Water Resource Recovery Center, which other communities call a sewer plant, convert it to natural gas, generate electricity to run our plant, sell the excess back to Black Hills. We're in the process of doing the same thing at our landfill. Broadband expansion, I'm on, also a provider here in the Cedar Rapids, Iowa City area, just announced a fiber to the home project in Dubuque, as they're doing here. That's sustainable innovations for us. Startup Dubuque, we are very envious, by the way, of your innovation in regard to entrepreneurial development. We are not going to copy you, we're going to partner with you and try to apply in Dubuque what makes sense. You're a much larger market than we are, so we're going to try to partner with you as we can. You're a great example of how that works. And finally, True North. It's about investing in our core census tracts in Dubuque, focusing on corridor development, but most importantly, removing abandoned single-family units that were converted to multi-family rental properties that have fallen on hard times, acquiring that, returning it to single-family ownership, and then selling those homes to families who are less than 80% of median household income to seed those neighborhoods with buy-in and generate wealth within families. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Rick, just frame of reference, how much is Cedar Rapids and Dubuque?
Dubuque City is right at 58,000. Dubuque County is right at 98,000, so I'm guessing we're about maybe a third somewhere. What is it?
130 in the city.
Yeah, okay.
130 in the city.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank
thanks.
you. That was a good guess.
Yeah.
Good morning. My name is Phil Wasta. I'm the Executive Director of the MedQuarter Regional Medical District here in Cedar Rapids. Born and raised in Cedar Rapids, and 4 years ago took advantage of an opportunity. I tell everybody it was my midlife crisis without the Corvette. I had the opportunity to take the position of Executive Director. The SMID, Self-Sustaining Municipal Improvement District, I put some sheets on the tables. We're I call it the middle child of the 3 SMID districts here in Cedar Rapids. First, there was the downtown district, which is 30 years old. We're about 8 years in, and then there's the Czech Nouveau district, which is about 3 years old. And we're all on different timelines and trajectories, if you will. Clearly, the downtown, my greatest example is the downtown's been around so long, they're now replacing the light poles that they bought 30 years ago. So they're mature and they're on a different timeline. The MedQ, we're breaking out of our kind of awareness phase and now into district development and improvement. And Czech Nouveau is starting up, starting to build their funding and starting to prioritize, if you will, the things that are most important to them as a district. So it's kind of interesting in Cedar Rapids to have 3 different districts on these different timelines and see how they execute the challenges that they face day in and day out. Glad to be here this morning.
Thanks. Good morning, everyone. I'm Robin Bostrom. I am one of 2 business specialists. I am with IEDA, with the Community Development Division out of Des Moines. About 90% of the work that I do across the state, I'm a business specialist, one of 2 on our team of 10. And so I work mostly with Main Street Iowa communities across the state, of which Czech Village Nouveau, woohoo, shout out to them. I know we've got some of those folks here in the room. And so what we do is we provide technical assistance to programs. I do a lot of business counseling with small businesses, but also programming and education, helping to develop the core of a downtown district within different size communities across the state of Iowa. Most of our work happens in smaller rural communities, but again, we do have several kind of urban neighborhood districts. And so excited to be here and share with all of you this morning. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. Okie dokie. So, thank you. Now we want this to be a discussion among our panelists and with you, and we will, I promise we will, get to your questions. Quinn Pettifer is here. She's going to walk around the microphone. Please use the microphone. You need to speak directly into it, I'm told. So, before we do that, our tradition is the first question for all of our panelists comes from the Gazette, our business reporter today, Thomas Freestad. You have a question. I know your name. I hired you. I know your name. What's your question, Thomas?
Good morning. So I wanted to start off by asking everybody, how important would you say it is for a community to develop its core where people gather and events happen? Or would you say that's a false premise from an economic standpoint?
Since I have a microphone here, I'll start, because each of us look at it a little differently, but for those of you that travel and visit other cities around the country, and I try to do that, getting my CEUs for my different licenses, because you learn a lot of things that are going on and can compare back to our city and how we're doing, and are we in the right direction. I put on all the tables what I call is the national ranking sheet, which I carry with me all the time. I call it the good news sheet. And wherever I travel, I try to pass that out as other members of the city council do, because number one, we don't appreciate where we live. And other cities have the same issues they're facing that we do, different scales sometimes. But it's important that we're a very strong, vibrant community. And what happens is, as you look around the country, and for cities that are struggling, where the struggle first shows up is in its downtown core, whether that's a rural district or a larger city. So if somebody drives in looking for a job or a place to live, or if they drive through the downtown and see a series of abandoned buildings or rundown buildings, that sends the signal, is that the way the rest of the town is? And so planners and city councils have done that issue, have addressed that issue for years. If you go to all the major core areas in our country, I was watching the national news the other night and they had New York City in the background, and I counted 10 tower cranes in downtown Manhattan that you could see just from that one shot. 10 tower cranes. Buildings that were 50, 60, 70 stories high. And what it is people, both young and old, wanting to move into the cores, and it's happening all over the country. And so we have been working on that for over 10 years to get more housing downtown, and it's taking hold, and units are getting rented the day they're done. And I know that's happening around, and many rural cities are taking their second floors of older buildings and making it into housing, because that's an important part of the vitality. And so nationally, we're trying to find those things that attract people to workforce development. And despite all the emails I get from older areas in the community, they don't like bikers. They don't like the streets are being narrowed and one-way streets going away, and it's confusing, and why are you doing that? Well, if you go around the country, cities are doing it all over because it's the new trend. It's the complete streets. It's the walkability. And we've been very fortunate here to make major strides in our trails using federal funding, our streets through the lost funds, bike lanes, all of that. And as I was driving from down the street at the coffee shop where I read my emails down here, I almost ran into 10 bikers. You know, they're everywhere. And some stop at stop signs, some don't. So that's what the people will write, whether they stop or not. But it's not, we're seeing this trend all over the country. And so we have to be on it and try to be attractive to other people. And so what you do is you pass out the good news. And that's what Dubuque does. Other cities do that. Because if I was a business or somebody going to a job, I want to go to somewhere where it's fun, it's a good place to work, I got lots of things to do, biking, running, activities, events. And so the core of the city, in our mind, even though a lot of the public doesn't like it when all these announcements come out about downtown, because they're thinking, why are you spending money redeveloping the downtown core when we have potholes in our streets? And it's a hard thing to understand that we need more people here to pay more taxes so we don't have to raise taxes, and we have the funds in which to make those improvements. So the downtown core sends the signal, is this a good community to live and work and call home? And if we have a strong downtown core, hopefully we're going to get some of those workers.
So what do you see, Rick?
Well, first of all, Michael, I can't wait to get back to my office so I can tell my staff that I'm not the only one that says okey doke.
It's an Ohio thing.
It's an Iowa thing too, I can tell you that. The answer to the question is yes. It is critically important to pay attention to the core of your community as it relates to the economic health of your community. In Dubuque, we see cities as living, breathing beings. For any of us, that means what do? We take care of our core. If we're good boys and girls, we exercise, we watch our intake. When we get in later years, might have to take some medications to maintain our heart, our lungs, our cardiovascular system. The core of a community, a living, breathing thing, is the heart of that being. And they grow tired and they need assistance. And if ignored, the being is diminished. Not just that neighborhood, but you sort of rot from the middle out. That's a new awakening, I think, nationally, and I think it was late in coming in rural America, but we get it now in Dubuque. It started with our Main Street redevelopment that was around 2000. Next was our riverfront development, which was a tired, ugly little riverfront. Now it's one of the most beautiful in the country. Then it went to Main Street development further north, then the Millwork District, which was at one time the largest manufacturer of wood window and doors in the country. Multi-story buildings, just as you have, that are no longer in production, and we had to find adaptive reuse to something else. And for us, that's lovely apartments upstairs, commercial development below. And now we're looking at our north end, and how do we reinvest in these porous census tracts to make sure that this is workforce housing and that too is paid attention to. So the key, I think, in downtown development, core development, is you realize that it's the heart of the being, but you can't ignore everything else. And it's the real challenge in rural America, and I believe we are all that, is the financial resources and the political will to make multiple investments simultaneously, doing the doable, not trying to do everything at once, but strategically thinking, how do you focus on that core and emanate from that.
We don't have to go in order each. I wanted to point out they self-selected their seating order. I did not arrange this.
I agree with everything that's been said. I'm a little bummed Rick took my medical analogy of the heart of the district, so I got nothing. The one thing I would add to what's been said so far, and I'm kind of surprised Scott didn't bring it up, is when you build from the core out, it is the ideal way to developing because you're taking existing infrastructure and building upon it. So as a city, you don't have to invest in new sewer, new water, new roads. You're taking existing sewer and water, modifying them, improving them, but you're taking that core, that existing city, and building up upon it, and therefore building its tax base, which is really what it's all about. Economic development is defined as increasing tax income for the city. So not that it's all just income, but smart development starts with that. And if we have a healthy core, and I think if anybody reflects back to 2007 before the flood here in Cedar Rapids, or 2008 after the flood, and as the downtown came back, all the building was from second floor up. And we're all driving through this, what felt like a completely empty city, because there was nothing on the ground floor. There was no retail, no vibrancy, and that's what will happen if your core doesn't have life, doesn't have that vibrancy on the main level. So we've seen that, but fortunately we've gotten past that.
Well, and I would agree. We in our world say that the heart of the city is your downtown, and we focus on historic preservation within downtown development. But I think, and I like to think of your downtown districts as your living room of your community. It's where everybody gathers, and they should gather, and historically that's how our communities were created. So it's kind of that third space where you have work, you have home, and you have that third space. So I'm going to date myself, but cheers. You walk in, everybody knows your name. It's that sort of space. So when we don't give our community and our residents kind of that third space to come and to hang out and to be a community together, then you start to bleed out. And again, using the heart analogy, you lose that sense of your community and that vibrancy goes away. So when you have active spaces, and so think about where you all like to go hang out. I mean, why is this area developing in so well? Why is it fun to come to this neighborhood? Because there's something going on. You see your friends, and there's this vibrancy that makes your community feel alive. And so when we forget about our downtowns, that's when we start to lose that. You need to have all three things. There needs to be business, there needs to be shopping, eating, dining, and living. And so again, when we see that second floor and that housing component come back, we see the vibrancy start to come back into a community.
All right. So we are now at the Q&A section of morning. Quinn, as I mentioned, there you are. Quinn has the microphone that we are not going to throw at people, but that's what that's for. That's why it's in that box. So please speak directly. Tell us your name, where you work, and if your question is for a specific panelist or everybody or whomever, please go ahead. Yes, sir.
All right. My name is Alan Beal. I'm with Transamerica, and as some may or may not know, we employ, depending how you look at it, 2,000 or 3,000 employees here in town. We're the largest employers, and we're undergoing right now a roughly $40 million renovation of our C Street campus, part of which, of course, is to attract young professionals, so just professionals generally, right, require a fair amount of talent, and it's certainly been a struggle to attract good talent, retain them. So I'm wondering from a city planning perspective, what specific amenities have you identified as necessary to attract and retain good quality talent, families, young professionals. Obviously, I know, again, the downtown Dubuque district, all of that is, a strong approach, but I don't know if there's any specific amenities that you've seen maybe countrywide as a trend that, really is necessary to get these young professionals to Cedar Rapids. Thanks for the deodorant this time.
Yeah, Robin, what do you say about that?
Well, definitely, I'm just going to tell you, I am a parent of those young millennials. So I have a son who's 30 and a daughter who's 28. So they are exactly the type of talent you're trying to recruit. The thing that we have seen changing for so long is that earlier generations chose where to live based on their job. The new generation chooses, they work where they have to, they live where they want to. And so that's hard for some of us to think backwards into working into that situation. So it is the affordable housing, but they want cool affordable housing. They don't want track, they want something interesting. So making sure that you have a good assortment of affordable housing, they're going to work really hard when they're at work, but they are all about having fun. When 5 o'clock comes, they want to know where they're going to go, and it is their active, fun, engaging things for them to do as young professionals where they, again, can hang out with their friends. So that's why we see every one of our communities wants a brew pub that has a place where we can play games, and because that's where all of the young professionals, they're looking for those places to engage, again, that third space.
The only thing I would add, I think it has to start with safety and security. I think a community has to have that basic provision of feeling safe in your home and safe in your space and safe in the city in which you live, and then build off of that. And I believe that what Scott was talking about with the narrower streets and everything's two-way, making it so that it's accessible for walkers, bikers, cars, and what I would call mutually safe for all those modes is important. The Med Quarter, we have 6,000 employees coming and going every day, but the difference between the Med Quarter and the other two districts, as I was kind of mentioning earlier in terms of the difference of the districts, the vast majority of our workers come to work and go home. And what we're targeting is trying to figure out how we can create a better environment, both the Med-Q and the other districts downtown, so that they're attracted to live downtown and then work in the Med-Q. And so I think all of these elements that are being stitched together help with that. But again, I think it starts with safety and security out of the gate.
Well, first of all, we're kindred spirits here at Dubuque, Cedar Rapids, Iowa City, Des Moines, Ames. Dubuque has the 5th lowest unemployment in the United States out of 390 plus metros. There are 2 Iowa MSAs that are even lower than ours. Iowa City, Cedar Rapids, Johnson County in particular, I believe, and Story County. So what do? 2% unemployment. The interesting thing in our market, Dubuque, despite the fact that we're 5th lowest unemployment in the country, we actually increased the number of people working in our MSA by 2% last year alone. We do it through what we call workforce solutions. It's about community and it's about relationships. On the community side, I believe that new workforce, whether it's empty nesters or college grads, are interested in a live-work environment. They like the notion of not being captive to a large home, a mortgage. They like to be able to walk to green space, to a coffee shop, to a bar, and in my hope, my daughter, to a library. They want to have that safe environment. That's an absolute requirement. And yes, the new generation is looking for a place to live, and then we'll find that place to work. But critically, you need both if you want to keep them. So our outreach is we give tours of our community at no charge to people who are applying for positions in our market. When they're hired, we give them a tour if they didn't already have one in the application process. We have classes that educate our newcomers to our community to try to help them become engaged and meet other newcomers to develop a network of friends, which we believe to be critical. And provide information to them, and of course, a campaign to recruit. Our newest campaign is Big Life, Small City, Your Home in Dubuque. And we're targeting people that have some notion of the Midwest. I think it's ludicrous to think that we're going to recruit our workforce from San Diego if they've never been to Iowa, or confuse Iowa with Idaho or Ohio. So it's a connection. So we are using analytics and data to connect HR community to people that have a connection to the Midwest, especially by alma mater of their college degree. So they have a connection within our market, so we don't have to educate them about how to pronounce Dubuque. So live work environment, human connection, it can work, and the employers need to make sure that they're an employer of choice by work culture, by compensation, and by upward mobility.
I think, there's so many things, and where you travel in the country, it's all the same issues that everybody is facing, so it's very competitive out there. And so it's hard for people in a city the size of Cedar Rapids to understand why are we spending all of that money on bike trails, painting stripes on the streets, narrowing streets, all the things I mentioned before. And it's just that competitive nature, and that's what they're looking for. And you go to downtown Chicago or downtown New York and see the high rises, and then you see the traffic and all of that, and I said, geez, how does somebody live through this? But they like the action, and it's the action of the city, being able to walk to that corner grocery store and tons of places to eat. And so what we're trying to do as a city is to be recognized, hence the national rankings. As a bronze, we are now a bronze bikeable city. We just got been named a walkable city. We have to have those elements, 95 parks, trails, bikes, and people do go online and look at those rankings because they're looking for a place to hang out. I used the example about 2 years ago. I hang out early in the morning at a coffee shop downtown, and a biker stopped to get coffee, and we started visiting. And he at that time worked at Rockwell Collins. He now works for a different company. But he said that we had a job applicant that came in, an engineer. He had 5 job offers out of school. And he picked Rockwell Collins, now UT, because we had the best bike lanes. That's how he picked his job location. And you don't think of that. I'm not a biker. I know it's important for health. I'm more of a walker. But it's like the bike share program. It's everything that we have to do that they see in other places, and that we are clean, neat, safe, and have job options, which we've got tons of job options. And it's the living options that have become critical now to that. So we're all on the same page, all facing, we all see it, you read it in the national papers, and we just got to be sensitive to that fact, which is hard to convince people that have lived in the city for decades that that's what's happening if they haven't seen it. And that's the battle we face in doing projects and the flack we get as a member of the city council.
So just to clarify our terms, when you say biking, which you said a few times, you're talking about Trek, you're not talking about Harley Davidson, right?
Yeah, no, I think it's both. I was just in a city on the river, we were across the way, and they've become a biker hangout. And there were hundreds of bikers from all over the Midwest, that kind of biker.
Yeah, okay,
yes.
all right.
I'm talking, the regular type bikers.
Okay.
Right.
I will mention that 2 jobs before this, I lived in Michigan, and they had been arguing for years about converting one-way streets to 2-way, and they did. When I look at Facebook to people people who are still, they're still arguing about it.
Yeah.
It's been 12 years, it's already happened. Retail wants it, nobody else does.
Yeah.
No. Yes, I know you've had, you got the box, there you go.
Sure. First of all, thanks everybody for showing up. Good to see you again, Rick.
Could you tell us your name, where you work?
Yes, Anthony Harrington, managing partner at Top Rank Professional and executive search firm and consulting training business here in Cedar Rapids. Focus on diverse and inclusive leaders. So Dubuque's doing some wonderful things. I was just up there yesterday. I'm just blown away. As a native who lived in Cedar Rapids most of my life and watched both Cedar Rapids and Dubuque transform. One of the questions that I have when I think about the constituents that I serve or spend time with is the perception, which can become reality, of gentrification. So I'm amazed at what we've done in Cedar Rapids, and I love this area. I grew up here, so when I see the transformation, it's been really cool. But when you hear the trickles into your communities about gentrification and where we put in the people that have affordable housing, so I'd like to dig into the numbers a little bit and ask, how do we in the community help our developers, our economic developers, explain where that affordable housing is going, where it's at, and what the units look like? So have we dipped the number of affordable housing units that we come up, and what are we doing about it as we beautify our cities?
That's a great question. We're having that discussion relating to housing types, and do we have requirements when new developments happen that have a certain percentage of affordable units in those same developments. We've been, for the last, since after the flood, we've had Maxfield do an annual housing study that's updated every year. The city pays for that, and we provide that to all developers. It's online for free, and what it shows is we've been very fortunate that because of the flood, we had a lot of new housing that is in the affordable category being developed. But we know that that is getting harder and harder to get done now. We've recovered, and there's not as many programs out there. So what we're trying to do is to look into the neighborhoods that we have, our opportunity zones, or mainly in our core area, to find out, I know Dubuque is heavy into this, Four Oaks is, Affordable Housing Network. We're trying to get out there and take housing that has declined and rebuild that into single-family housing near the core, so that no matter what your income is, you have the same access to all of those great activities that are going on that we're actually developing to recruit workers. And because, again, we live here. And so that's the thing we have to remember, that hopefully things we're doing to do workforce development also benefit all of the residents of this great community. And so if we do the right things, and it does make a difference, and the city continues to grow, hopefully everybody is enjoying those same benefits. And I think we have to watch what happens, that we don't price individuals out of the market, because of rapid development. And so it's a very sensitive issue. That's why we track it. And we've been watching the study just to make sure that we have the proper, that there's the right ratios of luxury housing to mid-range housing to affordable housing being developed, and the quality of that housing is the same for all. So in other words, it's not older properties to get the rents down, the same quality is up. So it's a great one. And hopefully the benefit of that plan is that our core neighborhoods are going to get better and better and become an active part of that, because they're all within walking distance of these things that we now call the new, attractive millennial areas, or whatever you want to call it, as a part of the community. So I think it's going to be a win-win. If we're going after workforce, and to do that we have to redevelop and provide more housing, everybody wins.
As a community, I think we should never allow perfect to become the enemy of the good.
Right.
And as you invest in poor neighborhoods, a national cry now is that this will lead to gentrification and a dislocation of the poor. To have gentrification, you have to have two requirements. One, gentry, and two, a place that they want to be. And in fact, I think in many of these neighborhoods, especially our poorest census tracts nationally, and I'll speak for Dubuque, that's not where gentry wishes to be today. In fact, the question is, do the people that live there wish to be there based on the decline of the neighborhoods? Interestingly, when we made the decision, the board of directors of Greater Dubuque Development 2 years ago, to make a huge investment and to have the north end, finding Dubuque's true north, as one of the pillars of our activities, we did expect some pushback from our more conservative investors and business leaders. There was none of that. The criticism of the investment in these poor neighborhoods came from the advocates for the poor. And that's interesting. When you make an investment to try to remove slum and blight, and you make informed judgments that you're acquiring not occupied rental property, but vacant rental property that's unfit for human habitation. And then you have the program that you will sell that rehabilitated property to that first-time home buyer that's less than 80% of median household income. So you're seeding those neighborhoods with low-income folks. And you're using people that are neighbors that we've removed the financial barriers of education and gainful employment through education and certificates of training. We call it Opportunity Dubuque. So the very folks that we're providing tuition to get certificates of training in NICC They are now gainfully employed, making $15 an hour or more, are our first-time home buyers. And the criticism of that program comes from advocates to the poor. So the challenge is how do we segment ourselves from those areas of clear gentrification that have occurred in major metropolitan areas, where you have Long Island, New York, and maybe there's slum and blight just on the other side of the street, and if you invest in that other side of the street, it becomes Long Island, New York. That's gentrification. But in rural America, where we find properties that have declined dramatically, where we've had single-family households that over the last 20 years have been turned into duplexes and triplexes, 90+% of the landlords are wonderful managers, a handful aren't. For example, one of the first houses we purchased, vacant, no tenant, had been vacant for 3 years. When we went in to gut the facility to begin the reconstruction process, we found that there were 9 squatters living there, one lady in her 70s, near death, hospitalized, son prosecuted for elder abuse. That was in the middle of a residential neighborhood and no one knew it was there. That's not gentrification, that's saving lives. And so we have to figure out how do we define that so we can actually move forward in doing the doable and not sacrificing the good in search of the perfect.
I'll go macro for just a minute. The Ernie Goss report came out, I think it was last week, and to take 2 of Rick's comments from earlier on his introductory comments, we've got low unemployment, but wage growth is not climbing. And Rick said 2 things, that they're down to 2% employment, but the other thing that needs to be done as people are brought in is they have to have upward mobility. And right now, we're at this strange point where we have ultra low unemployment, but not really good wage growth. And the way that the people are going to afford better places to live is to have wage growth through all, the spectrum of jobs that are out there. And I think then the other twist is the affordable. I know there's formulas to it, but it's hard to define what affordable is. And my hope, when I reflect this all back to the Med Quarter, I've gone out and met with Wellington Heights and the different neighborhoods. My hope, again, to my earlier comments, is that we get professionals, working professionals in the Med Quarter that start to look at Wellington, are willing to buy these houses that have been cut into, duplex, triplex, quadplex, and now turn them into single-family homes again and rebuild that neighborhood. Not through gentrification, but through, earnest buyers who want to live in that neighborhood.
Right, so I think the challenge, and I agree, and for the record, I'm not here to say that this is what you're doing. It's deliberate. I've seen it being done deliberately in our decisions, but I think we have to, as communities, tell a better story, because the average Joe, the G word is the G word, it is what it is, and that's what they see, and that's what they hear, and so we have to do a better job of telling that story in layman's terms to the average Joe on the street, because if I were to take that example, so we're beautifying this neighborhood, we're taking this amazing house that was a multi-family house and we're turning it into a single-family home. To Joe go outside, that's like, well, you're moving 6 families to put 1 family in. Where's the other 5 families? Yeah. Right. So we have to be better at telling that story because that's the perception that happens.
I think that point, and Scott mentioned this too. That's where it puts the burden on community to make sure there are alternatives, safe, affordable housing available in not just that neighborhood. I think we have to avoid too of having low-income housing available only in poor census tracts. That puts a tremendous burden on our public school system and the elementary schools in particular. I think we have to look at a macro level, but we're sensitive to it. But the fear I have is that the notion of gentrification would cause you to do nothing, which would be a sin. But we do have to be cognizant of the fact that yes, you need to have affordable housing, especially for the epidemic growth of single women head of household living in poverty. That is the ugly little secret in the Midwest, is that growth. Single women head of household living in abject poverty.
I'm very patient. Good morning. I'll stand up so people can see me in the back. My name is Darcella Craven, and I operate the Veterans Business Resource Center. We assist veterans and military families with starting and expanding small businesses. And we are partners with the SBA, so we do all of Missouri, Kansas, Iowa, Nebraska, Southern Illinois. My question is to the point of kind of seeing things better. So I think we need to put a new face on a lot of stuff, including entrepreneurship, because I'm a Harley Davidson driver.
Both answers yes.
So
I
I
was trying to
think
understand.
it's just changing
Yes.
what the PR. So could each of you tell me kind of what you do PR-wise for what you're doing, especially on entrepreneurship? Because when people hear entrepreneurship, they think, the next Twitter, they think the next super scalable thing. They're not thinking about Joe Smith who's got, the local grocery store.
Yeah, we talk about entrepreneurship. I don't know who of you were here for EntreFest, but one of the panels that I hosted, that I was a moderator for, we had some hedge fund folks here and some venture capitalists, and they're talking about big dollars. So you think entrepreneurship, oh my God, I need a couple $1 million before I can even start. So yeah, Robin, what do you say?
Well, most of the work I do is with very small, wanting to, we'll call them mom and pop businesses. My background is my husband and I owned his third generation grocery business that had been in his family for 60 years. So that's where I come from. So one of the things we're doing, especially through the Main Street program, is to help our small businesses in the districts tell their story. And I think that's where we haven't been good about doing that because a lot of our business owners in these communities are women. They're independently owned and they're really struggling. So we are really trying to help people get out there, tell your story, do social media, talk about what you do, and communicate that to the community. It's also about building a network within those districts of business owners that can support each other. So events like this, but even things on smaller scale. So helping people tell their story, understanding all the things they need to do to be a strong business owner in today's, it's changing rapidly. Another area that we're focusing on is helping to bring technology in and do technology training with small businesses. I work with businesses that some of them don't even use a computer yet, which most of us go, oh my God, how do you know what you're doing? But we do have people that are there. Another big factor for us is the whole influence of social media and how that affects businesses. But it's a great tool for communication if people learn to use it correctly. So a lot of the work we do is just helping to build that educational level and elevate those small business owners so they are more sustainable. And they are usually the ones that create that unique vibrancy that all of us want within our city cores. So that's a lot of the work that we do.
We've tried to brand it, to your point, by saying Startup Dubuque. It's not just about technology, it's about small business. The lion's share of our efforts are through the Small Business Development Corporation, and that's really counseling people, whether they want to begin a tech company or they want to start a service company or a contractor or a coffee shop. We actually lack the technology side of it and that part of the entrepreneurship. But not to avoid that question, but just to comment a little further on low unemployment and gentrification. And part of the conversation each of our communities has to have is the disproportionate poverty and unemployment that exists despite economic prosperity in the minority community. Recently, Waterloo was labeled as the worst place in America to be black. It was based on criteria that had to do with unemployment and what median household income was for the black community versus the majority community, and the numbers were terrible.
Rick, do you remember where was that ranking from?
I don't remember.
Okay, all right, sorry.
But that's up to the paper to find the source.
We have at least two reports there.
But I would tell you that Waterloo had a large enough minority population to be considered. If you looked at those communities that had a lower percentage of black population, their numbers would have been even worse than Waterloo's. Dubuque's approach to this, we call Inclusive Dubuque, is to try to find ways of using education in fields that have gainful employment in our market, and then upskilling the minority community to be employable in those growing fields. For example, we have a program called Opportunity Dubuque. It's graduated 600 folks that anywhere from welders to CNC operators to phlebotomists to CNAs. 12, 13, 14 disciplines. NICC, Northeast Iowa Community College, is our partner on that, and of course you have Kirkwood, who's a phenomenal community college here in your market. The first 200 graduates were very successful. 94% placement rate in employment. We looked at the demographics. There were 2 black participants out of 200 participants. That told us something. We hired caseworkers to go into the community, to knock on doors, to give the news about this program, because the minority population, quite honestly, didn't know about the program. The next 400 graduates, 80 of them were minority, and their graduation rate and their employment rate are identical to the white community. So we have to find ways of not only having programs, but also realize that we have to really get into the neighborhoods and meet people where they're at and inform them of the opportunities.
I'm just going to approach and add something a little different direction. Being in the business I'm in commercial real estate and recruiting retail to Cedar Rapids, what's happening is retailers, the national chains, are declining, and so less and less stores. Secondly, what we find is there are national chains that would like to come to the Cedar Rapids metro area, but they can't find people to run the business that would own and run it. And they would be here if we could find a franchisee. And so instead of trying to find spaces, they're looking for people to run those businesses and to be a part of that type of thing. And so what's happening, we're seeing more and more empty retail strip mall spaces in our community because there's no national retailers coming in, and it's difficult for a small business owner to pay the rent. So I answer the phone calls on a couple of retail spaces I have. You tell them what the rent is, and it goes silent on the other end. Because they don't realize the cost to build a new building or maintain a building. And so it's really changed. We're going to see the opportunities. There's spaces there, there's landlords there that are needing to fill spaces, and the rates are going to get more and more competitive. So there's lots of opportunities to start businesses because that is where those opportunities are falling now, and there's spaces and locations that are in good areas. So I think the national trends are going to start impacting, hopefully creating more local businesses as a part of this effort.
Just a question.
Next question.
Okay. Robin?
Thank you. My name is Robin Cash. I'm with Neighborhood Network News, an independent video-based, internet-based news service in Cedar Rapids, and an observer of the local scene. One of the things that, like a straw in the wind, that got my attention recently was when I was attending a meeting of our finance committee. Our finance director mentioned that sales tax receipts were down by about $3 million. And so that made me start wondering, because our Cedar Rapids was pretty flush following the flood, and we had a lot of money circulating. And so, though consumption nationwide is up, so it made me wonder if the pressure that is going on in Cedar Rapids reflected in the reduction in sales tax and consumption being up is that it's pretty much debt-driven. Household debt, mortgages, cars, credit cards, student debt is a big factor. And Iowa is for a long time known as a low-wage state. I think Phil acknowledged that. Amenities aside, people like to live where they can make a living. So I wonder what can be done to get wages up. That would generate lots of activity in the economy. My information is that single-family dwellings are on a downward trend in Cedar Rapids, multi-family, multi-unit enterprises way up. People just can't afford this stuff, so we need to figure out some way to get wages up. Our legislature is still, in the dark ages about wages, and we're not going to keep people here or draw people here if we're not going to enable them to live.
So your question is for anyone in particular, or?
No, I'd like to know the whole panel's view on
Okay, that's for all of you.
Well, I'll just quickly, Robin, I think what's happening is wages are going up, but for certain types of jobs and individuals, it's more difficult to get to that higher level, even though we have, there's jobs everywhere. There's a sign in almost every business I go into, hiring, and wages are gradually going up. And unfortunately, like you say, it's not been mandated, and I'm a proponent that, you know, we're crazy to have the minimum wage that we have now, because number one, nobody pays that anymore. It's much higher than that, and why not go ahead and now's the time to make that change and to raise that minimum wage, and that would get rid of those jobs that, you know, some people still get paid at that level. And so it's an interesting dilemma, because housing costs are going up and everything else. That's why people with credit scores and that are struggling, that are having to go to apartments because they can't get a mortgage. And so it's a catch-22. We have lots of jobs, but people have to be trained. They have to have opportunities. They have to have a decent place to live, and it's hard to enjoy the amenities if you're struggling day to day to survive. And so I totally agree that we need to continue to work to make our jobs as high-paying as possible, and so that all people benefit from living in our metro area.
I think we always have to be careful when we consider cause and effect. I agree with you that retail sales are flat. In fact, they're flat in Dubuque, despite the fact that we have 2% unemployment, that our median household income has increased dramatically in the last 5 years. Our retail sales are flat. It's because of internet sales. My daughter lives 3 houses down the street from our house, and every time I drive by there, I see 3 boxes from Amazon on her front doorstep. There are no boxes from Amazon on my front doorstep. It's a difference in buying, and unfortunately, when you purchase, although there has been legislation to remedy it, it has not fixed it. When you purchase in web-based sales, the community does not get the sales tax. And so the sales are there, they're just not through the normal means in big box retail, and as a result, lost revenue locally. That needs to be fixed on a federal and state level. But your point about a livable wage is absolutely true. There is a large population in all of our communities that are unemployed or underemployed, despite the fact that we have 2% unemployment. And it's on community leaders and friends and neighbors to identify that audience, understand if there are programs out there that can help them upskill and become gainfully employed, meet them again where they live, educate them about what the opportunities are, and the opportunities aren't sufficient enough to create new ones, because that's sort of part of the core and the heart of the community as well, all citizens of the population. Especially single women head of household, that's another issue we've not discussed, is child care. We just launched a child care pilot in Dubuque where we're reaching out to single parent head of household, politically correct men and women, 95% plus women, making sure that they understand that child care should not be a hurdle to their receiving employment. So we're providing free child care to single women head of household in these certificates of training programs through Opportunity Dubuque, and then free child care, last payer, but free child care for 1 year following, so they can survive the cliff effect of being gainfully employed and being able to support their family. These kinds of programs have to be implemented regionally, statewide, and nationally if we're going to address the issues of poverty.
I'll take it from the employers that I speak to. So you've got St. Luke's, Mercy, PCI, but then also independent clinics. There is nearly an insatiable demand at starting level, or just what I would call initial training level jobs within the Med Quarter right now. And so those organizations have partnered with Coe College, Mount Mercy University, and Kirkwood to come up with programs to get, if you will, feeder lines into these starting both nursing, technician, but also housekeeping and food service, to try and get lines in so that these people can get the education needed, get the certification needed, and in many cases they'll pay for the education. So there's a lot of impetus. I think you made a comment about people that just aren't aware of the programs that are out there, and therefore they go unutilized, which really is a shame. But Robin, I think there is a lot of opportunity out there if people seek it out, and these organizations are wanting to pull them in to give them an opportunity again for that upward mobility.
Well, and I'll just kind of speak to, again, a lot of the folks that I deal with are those very small employers where when you talk about increasing the minimum wage and all those sort of things, it's the cause and effect. What happens if I'm a small employer and when I owned my grocery store, I employed 65 people. If I had to pay all of them $12 or $15 an hour, I would have been done. So you have to really think that through. I think the other thing is if we can help our business people, especially our small independents, be better business people, to better understand their financials, to better understand those tools that are out there to help them run their business more efficiently, more profitably, that will help. I applaud you in Dubuque on the child care initiative. That again is a huge issue in every community that we work in that we have young parents and young families who are saying, I can't afford $1,300 a month to put my kid in daycare. Why am I working? So again, we have to come together as communities, as employers, as all the people that care in our community to make sure these things are in place so that our families can be strong and move forward.
The Iowa Women's Foundation, if I have that name correct, when they did the tour, I'm sure some of you here know what I'm talking about, right? They went around the state and talked to various groups, and the two of the biggest issues, two of the bigger issues they found were, you're right, preventing women from getting more jobs or taking some of the jobs. There was training, everything else, but it was daycare, childcare, and transportation. They didn't have a way to get there, and what do they do with their children anyway, because they're usually the primary caretakers. Yes.
My name is Tim Crosby. I'm with MMS Consultants, who are a civil engineering firm and site planner in Iowa City, works exclusively in eastern Iowa. I have an observation, take advantage of a rare opportunity for the platform, and I'd also like comments. I grew up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and spent the first half of my career there. Now, that's a place that I know that Michael and Phil are probably fairly aware of. Grand Rapids is a very thriving community right now, and I know there's been discussion about the role that the medical district there and the medical mile has had in Grand Rapids. But I wanted to point out the observation. I moved from there in 1993 when the town was dying. The trigger point for their development was not the medical business. The trigger point for their development was when Grand Valley State moved to satellite campus downtown.
And it's a beautiful campus.
Yes. It's not critical that it was the university, but the key development element there was the fact that it was a captive population that had funding. So it was an influx of a significant size population that had parent funding, if nothing else, that could live and spend downtown. And that was the thing that was the trigger point that brought capital, brought private investment into Grand Rapids.
Well, there was also, not to go on with this too long, but there was also the DeVos family and the Van Ambels.
That's private investment.
Yes.
And it's the kids that brought that there.
Yes.
And that's all I have to say. I would welcome comments, but I don't get too many opportunities to share that detail.
So, Rick, tell us a little bit. So we had a flood here, a big flood, 2008, you may have heard about it, and a few other ones since then. And that, as we've discussed, has made a lot of change. Like, oh, well, here's some FEMA money, here's this, here's that, we need to make a change. What prompted Dubuque to say we need to step up our game and think about these things?
Well, first of all, not only do I remember it, 12 years ago, I was on the other side of the Cedar, tearing and gutting some of these homes with a number of volunteers from Dubuque that came here because we understand how devastating a flood can be, and it takes time to recover from it. Dubuque, fortunately, being on the Mississippi, after the flood record for us, which was 1965, decided that they can't let that happen again. And so within the next 10 years, developed a flood protection system, which is even more robust today than it was then. And so even though the last flood in the Mississippi was the longest flood of record, over 80 days where it was over flood stage, nothing happened in Dubuque. It's a matter of flipping the switch, making sure that everything works. Dubuque's challenge with flooding now is stormwater flooding, and that's having sufficient drainage. One of the things that's being done in the poorest census tracts of our community was the creation of what we call the B branch drainage area, where they daylighted an undercapacity stormwater system and turned it into a gorgeous linear park through the poorest neighborhoods of our community. There has not been a single damaged flood since it opened, and it's not fully functional yet. There were 6 presidential disaster declarations in the 10 years prior to that. So flooding prevention of flooding takes tremendous investment, and I know that that's the challenge here. It also takes leadership and planning, and you can't sacrifice the perfect, the good for the perfect. So maybe you don't have everything you need in the flood protection, but you have to get going on it. Dubuque is fortunate now. The investments have been made, not just in Mississippi, but on stormwater collection, and they have made a $200 million investment in this B branch drainage area to prevent flooding in the poorest neighborhoods of its community.
You have a microphone.
Hi, my name is Shauna Burns. I'm with Restoration One. And I basically had a question as far as, with all the programs that are available, is there some sort of CRM, somebody that is kind of a face or a voice for, we have these available, you know, we have small business counseling. We want to expand opportunities. Who do you talk to? You know, somebody like a face they can go to. And as far as like the upward mobility in small businesses, I was wondering, what are you doing to sustain the current culture? You know, all these new acquisitions that are coming in, what about sustaining the current in that aspect?
Just quickly in Dubuque, we focus more on business retention and expansion than anything else we do. So we sit down with over 300 businesses every year, face-to-face contact, use a contact manager called Synchronist. We address the issues or opportunities each of those employers on a micro level and macro level. We use the data to drive what our direction should be in planning, because that is the heart of your community as well. People have already made the investment.
And Cedar Rapids, similar, we've been doing a business survey. We found that that's very important to seeing what the trends are. And again, we have so many, like you mentioned, some great resources here, but it is hard for people to find them sometimes. And so that outreach or that community input, I think, is a very good point. And because we're very fortunate to have Kirkwood and many other resources here that came out, some of them, our other resources came out of the flood and continued. And so we have the resources. It's just like you say, you went door to door into the community to let people know that they're there, and I think that was a great move on outreach because a lot, if you don't get the paper, you don't see the news, or you see that, those are something that's, I shouldn't say anything, but those things aren't in
Not enough people.
Not enough people.
Actually, I do want to point out, Iowa has a higher daily newspaper readership than most other
Yes,
states.
and the online things are becoming more popular, but the point being is that's not a feature story. That's not a story that's in the news all the time. That here's our resource page, and so I think it's a very good point because we are fortunate to have some good sources and opportunities. It's getting out there and making those happen and letting people know that there is an opportunity. Please come on in and give it a shot.
We really recommend that our communities focus about 80% of their time and effort on business retention and expansion and 20% on dangling the carrot for the new guy, because it's far easier and less expensive to support the folks you already have than to go after that new, and there's no silver bullet on that. The other thing that we really do a lot of work on is building that network of business to business, people helping each other and being that communication of, hey, this program is there, that program is there. And so we help our programs and our directors really develop, and we really tell them they need to be feet on the street. So as you said, you need to go talk to people. And I think there's lots of different ways to do that now with social media. That's a good opportunity. But again, really building that network so that the businesses are supporting each other.
I'm really fortunate that a lot of the employers in the med-queue are institutional, so they aren't, they don't come and go, if you will. And yet at the same time, the businesses that we want to attract need to be attracted. In other words, they need to be something attractive for them. I've got a couple different subcommittees that I work with. One is the Economic Development Committee, headed by Tim Charles. And what we decided in that committee is that we don't want to reinvent the wheel or spend money creating something that already exists. And in that way, we're partnering with Dubuque and the Iowa Startup Accelerator with what we call the Mid-Quarter Mentor Network, so that we can provide assistance to those who are seeking it, and in doing so, give them a soft landing and an entry into a network. Clearly, we would like it to be healthcare related, but we're helping some of the startup companies that have nothing to do with healthcare at all. But it's really a matter of kind of opening the door. And to Robin's comment about having the conversation, one of my metrics this year, I've been kind of managing on the squeaky wheel process until now, but to proactively go out into the mid-quarter and have what we call Main Street conversations with the businesses in my district, so that I'm not just assuming, or we're not just assuming that all is well, that if there is things that we can help with, that we do.
Yes, sir. You are.
Hello, I'm Mike Heffern. I'm with MediaCom Business, and I do have a business question. First, I wanted to make a point that I'm also a cyclist. Personal level, I ride with other cyclists. We ride bikes. I encourage people to use the term cyclist instead of bikers.
Yeah, cyclist.
Eliminates the confusion between those who ride bikes and those who ride.
Yeah, good point.
My business question is what the core areas are doing to bring coaxial and fiber into the downtown area and into the core areas. I know some of it was damaged by the floods of 2008. What efforts are being made to improve that access?
Well, as it relates to the flood, again, there was so much damage that, a lot of the infrastructure is still being rebuilt. And so, fortunately, we have a lot of companies that need that capacity. So we're starting to see our major fiber providers and others come back into the core because there's business there that will buy their service. And so I've seen the service go up dramatically. I'm a partner in a historic building, and we teamed with CenturyLink to bring fiber into the building, which had never been done before, as a part of the reconstruction, and allow people to tap into that. And I think a lot of businesses are doing that, and the technology's increased so much that you're seeing more and more of that available in all of the buildings. And it's nice to have competition, so there's 2 or 3 entities that are doing that in the core areas. But I don't think there's anything that we're doing as a city to encourage that, besides providing the right kind of places where there's people living there and businesses that are there that are demanding that service. Once there's the demand there, it's amazing how private enterprise comes in and taps into that. And we have some great providers like MediaCom in our city that have made major strides in increasing our fiber service throughout the community, so we appreciate that.
When we initiated the 10th Street Improvement Project that's underway right now, we're redoing 5th Avenue to 8th Avenue on 10th Street. I had all the fiber providers in the same room because we were going to have the whole area torn up, and I asked if they wanted to drop more conduit without having to do directional boring before construction. What I learned in that is, to Scott's point, we have a very robust fiber system within the med-quarter, as is demanded by the hospitals and all the clinics that work with them. The only thing that I was told that's a little bit short right now in our area is redundancy. They were talking about a redundant loop that over time might be installed or might be desirable, but nobody wanted to take it beyond where it's at right now as we looked into it.
We've got one question back here, and then I see 2 more up front, so I'm making my way back to you, just so you guys know.
Thank you. I'm Pat Parsley. I currently work for the city of Hiawatha. I'm a recent transplant from Minnesota. And they do say okie dokie in Minnesota.
I'm never going to say that again in my life.
I think it's more indicative of our age. Sorry.
Noted. I reflect that remark.
Okay. Being from Minnesota, the jurisdiction I worked for before had an old downtown. And I now work for a jurisdiction that is trying to create a modern downtown. As you're aware, Hiawatha really doesn't have a core business district that we're trying to develop right now. So I have two questions. One is, what do you see as the significant differences between the old downtown concepts and the modern downtown? And the second question is, since you've been involved in these processes, certainly you've had some pitfalls and failures and some solutions to overcome. Is there anything specific that we need to avoid in our process?
Well, I would just say that, first of all, at the end of the day, somebody has to make money on these deals or you can't get them done. And adaptive reuse of existing downtowns is more expensive than new construction. So we need to embrace that, understand that, and remove that financial barrier to reinvestment. I think the key to creating new downtowns in suburbia, not to label Hiawatha, but new communities that didn't have that town square concept as the initial layout of the grid for the community. It's about a focus, not so much on architecture, but on space. On green space, how do people meet? It's not so much on a retail service basis as it is a gathering place with support of retail and hospitality and service around it. So it's just a little bit different model. And for us in Dubuque, the oldest city in Iowa, certainly we had the advantage because urban renewal didn't quite have the same devastation in our downtown that it's had in others. Many of our architectural gems were retained and they are focal points for our neighborhood. Anything that is of that nature should be saved in the future. So just try to keep those anchors, whether it's in Hiawatha, downtown Cedar Rapids, or Dubuque.
I would definitely agree with that, and what we see is, and again, I speak to my children who are like, they want to go to cool spaces. So vanilla box buildings, they don't like that. They love being in a Kwanzaa hut that's now a brewery. They love that kind of engaging space. So again, I think it's important that you have, again, those three things. It's about the gathering space, it's about the green space, it's about the walkability, and just giving them a place to hang out. What's interesting is that I now live in Ankeny, and if any of you are familiar with, they are creating this whole Prairie Trail development, which is a new development that's meant to look like an old town. There's a town square, the library's there, but there's eating, there's dining, there's entertainment, there's retail, and there's housing. So it's all the things that we see typically in the hearts of our historic downtowns, and we're trying to recreate it in a place that there wasn't a downtown.
And I think in the case of Cedar Rapids, unfortunately, like you say, it's so expensive to maintain older structures. And so I was just looking the other day at most of our city incentives, which some people like, some don't, but they're mainly in the core. And they're for gray fields, urban revitalization, brown fields, infill developments, and TIFs. So, that's the way we have to bring people in to save those buildings and things, is to offer incentives, which the public that live outside of the core think that, that's something they should be investing out in the other core. But we know that the core, it's just more expensive if we want to save things versus having them torn down, and we have blighted areas like many cities across the country do. We're fighting to keep our core, and hopefully we can find that balance between the right amount of incentives and for the right purpose so that we accomplish that goal as Dubuque is doing aggressively in preserving what is a beautiful historic community that that's really rare, in Iowa for that type of a city.
Okay, well.
Can I just jump in for a second though? I'm going to do a quick little commercial. Our downtown conference that IEDA hosts this fall is actually going to be in Dubuque in some of those cool downtown spaces. So if you are really interested in downtown development, that's my commercial. Come to the conference in August.
While we're at this juncture in the conversation, let me ask you this. We can talk about this for a moment. What's the difference between philosophical, in fact, the difference between core district development, which uses property tax dollars among other things, and neighborhood grassroots initiatives, and are those ever in conflict? And I know that's a leading question.
Again, I think that's a very good question because we in Cedar Rapids have some core neighborhoods that have commercial and other types of redevelopments, and so the city, since after the flood and the redevelopment of downtown occurring, we have tried to go out we budget one planning session in each of the core areas that are the smaller neighborhoods to give them a master plan like the downtown has. And so they're working in the Dubuque area for a plan. We've done Time Check. We've done Mount Vernon Road. Other areas are coming down the pike. And so we're going to continue to do that so that those areas have the same kind of design and resource and ideas as the downtown core has, so that we can go into the neighborhoods and preserve those commercial areas that still are retained, that some cities, like you say, are trying to rebuild. We're very fortunate to still have a few of those left. We just got to make sure they don't decline and become issues that we have to fix in the future.
There is a plan, you said there is some kind of plan for Time Check.
Yes, there is a plan, yes. And we've done most of the areas now, and we're continuing to do it, and we'll continue to find areas that hopefully we can provide those same kind of planning tools.
Because that question comes up because we hear that and people say, well, what about us?
Yes.
You're all concerned about downtown, what about people?
Right on.
All right, okay. Anybody else want to touch that?
I think the danger is divide and conquer. So,
yes,
one of the challenges is parochialism kills development, and we think that if it doesn't go here and goes there, then that's a bad thing. There needs to be a plan as to how everyone is benefited down the line, but not everyone can have the investment simultaneously because there aren't enough resources. So it's a matter of communication, I think, and planning, and not becoming so parochial that you do nothing anywhere instead of doing what you can everywhere.
And I would just add to that our cities and our government can't do it all by themselves. It really needs to be a public-private partnership for good development to happen.
Yeah, we have
Yeah, real
follow-up.
quick,
Yes.
so, great points. I want to go back to, I forgot your name, man. Her comment about PR and then your comment about boots on the ground. And I was sitting here thinking about, I'm always trying to think outside the box. And I think about many of the large organizations that promote their services, right? Their businesses, they're trying to sell their business, sell the widget, whatever it is. So as an headquarter, and I'm not blaming you for folks, I'm just asking this question rhetorically, maybe you can address it. But when we think about creative ways to get the message out, I could go down the street in a rough neighborhood and I can see Cricket with a tent up selling cell phones. Multi-million-dollar business. They're going to the people that they believe will buy that product or that need that product. And so I can't go to the mall and see a headquarter kiosk or a headquarter tent. And my question is, have we thought about creative ways to get that message to those folks in very simple ways? Because these multi-million-dollar companies, Sprint, any of those companies, they use these very simple methods of communication, and that's going to the people with a kiosk or a tent, or go to the mall or go to a fair. Have we thought about those things to get your messages out of what you're doing and the services you have to help people that have those needs? And just simple ways like that.
So, what are you doing?
Well, I think the city of Cedar Rapids has been trying to participate in downtown markets, all these different outreach open houses. They move the open houses around, try to get into the neighborhoods so people will attend. And it's an important, you're right on. I mean, we need to bring a lot of that information and stuff to the areas, and I think the city is doing a better job of that. We can do more, no question. And so as long as we continue to bring that out, it's amazing. When I see the city set up their resources and bring everything to play, there's a lot to show. And so we just need to continue to do that and hopefully get the information out so people show up. I've been to several of these in outlying areas, and it's usually the same regulars that show up. And once in a while, you'll see 3 or 4 new faces. And so we need to do a better job of getting the new faces there that don't have an opportunity on a regular basis to participate.
To try and address the question as it was posed, the mid-quarter...
That wasn't directed at you, by the way.
No, the mid-quarter itself is not an employer. I think the role that I can play is to get the key players in the mid-quarter to find where there are common threads that they will collaborate on. Because the one thing that is very clearly understood, especially by me, these are all competitors in the same market, that are competing for the same employees, competing for the same patients in some cases, but they all believe that the regional medical district is a positive both for Cedar Rapids and of course their firms. To your point, people have to make money in the end. So what I'm trying to do is seek out ways, those common threads where it can be a non-competitive approach and a collaborative approach to take the awareness of the Med Quarter and the amenities of the Med Quarter and get the message out. But in terms of me marketing the Med Quarter out in Marion,
And maybe I misunderstood, I'm saying marketing some of our social or our community services, for
Right.
example, the SBA, or for example, and I'll just use Rick's example, that child care program is amazing.
yeah.
I would probably take that child program and go sit right in the middle of the hood, or whatever you want to call it, and say, hey, you're trying to get jobs, we got child care. Come talk to this tent, because I can go there and I can find a liquor store. I can go there and I can find a police substation. But why can't I find an organization that tells me what I can do for my business or for my transportation? And I'm not, again, this isn't you forward. This is just a general creative, it's really not creative, it's just simple. And I think those are ways that we can communicate to the simple individual that doesn't hear the details that we're talking about today. And those are things we're thinking about. So not Med Quarter, but just some of those services that are available. How do we get that message out in more simple ways?
Well, what is it? You just need to get out from behind your desk.
Yes.
Go in the neighborhood, knock on a door, and you don't want to send me. I mean, no, really, some privileged white male, gray-headed guy knocking on doors, danger, So you need to understand your audience and have an appealing communicator with that audience, but it needs to be in a household level and go where the people go, their churches, places of worship, their community centers, and get the message out. And we learned that the hard way, because if you create a great program, but the people you hope to participate don't show up, either the program's cracked or you haven't done a good job of communication. Fortunately, all we hadn't done was a good job of communication.
Okay, we have about 3 minutes left. We've got time for one more, hopefully quick question, quick answers, because then Jill's going to shut off my microphone.
Hi, I'm Sophia Manhattan. I've had a lot of different titles, but when I got here, definitely a single teen mother living in abject poverty. So childcare, 1,000%, absolutely. I really appreciated the conversation and the program around providing opportunities to grow skill sets and get education for people of color. That's a very good point, but I think that we are doing ourselves a disservice if we don't acknowledge that disparities persist even when the education and skill levels between prospective employees are the same. That's not my question. My question is, one of the things I've been thinking about through this whole conversation about revitalizing core downtown areas is who is the target resident. And what's coming across is obviously for business purposes, we're seeking employees. We need people who are going to add to the tax base and help to build our employers up. So that being the case, how do we ensure that there's still an availability of services and spaces for others, or do we want this to be a place where these people who are coming here can grow? And when I say grow, I mean not only grow and have a family, but I mean, Councilman, you know the rooms that I stand in. I had about 15 seniors yesterday asking me where their senior center is. So how do we make sure that the core is a space for everyone while attracting those employees that we need for our businesses?
Okay, we need speed dating kind of answers.
Well, I think it's, that's the catch-22 question of how do we make, a quality of life for everyone, no matter what your background, what your job is. And it's so difficult with funding, just the battle of the senior center, and how do you find it? It's not the fact that we can't raise the money to build one, it's that we can't find necessarily the money to operate it. Because most people that come to a senior center can't afford to pay high membership fees, pay for a lot of courses. And so it's really something that benefits, people of all ages. And I think our conversation is changing. We call it the new, between Rick and I here, the new active seniors versus the people that need help. And because people are living longer, people are more active at our age, and we want different services, not just some place to hang out. And so I'm very excited about the progress that's being made for bringing the senior center back into the core. And we just need to find that right fit and make sure that we're treating everybody from the young millennials and people needing workers with our main workforce all the way up to the seniors so that we have a community that's good for everyone. And that is a fine line because some of these services, as you find out in Dubuque, cost money to do, and that means it comes from the taxpayers. And when that happens, we face a lot of criticism, for some of the programs that we're doing because it's going to potentially raise taxes. And so, but it benefits the entire community. So it's a very important subject, and we just need to make sure that we're making it happen and we're all on the same page.
Quick answer.
To Scott's point, I was prematurely gray, but no longer. I'd like to thank the Gazette for the invitation and note that the Telegraph Herald, our local newspaper, Dubuque, is our largest investor in Greater Dubuque Development Corporation. The CEO of that organization is our chair. God bless the Free Press. To your point, I just think it's a matter of communication and understanding what people need and engaging leadership in both the public and the private sector to listen and to help develop a strategy that they would fund, but they aren't necessarily in a position to create. So we have to put things on a platter for people with the means to support it, to endorse it. And that takes work and personal connection.
I think the way I would approach that is that if I were to kind of rearrange your question, it's that not only are we looking for the working urban professional, but that there's diversity in those, diversity in the workforce and diversity of opportunities that would attract them to be there in the first place. Beyond that, though, there is a strong demand, and I think Scott would agree with this, of now empty nesters moving to the core and seniors moving to the core. When you get that spectrum, when you get that true spectrum, not just a bunch of working professionals, but the spectrum in age, you'll get more. There will be the demand for the senior center. It will become the top project for the city as opposed to the fifth project for the city.
I would agree in some of the development projects that we've seen in all of our smaller communities, and one that I was directly involved in my home community, the same people that moved into this housing, millennials and the more mature worker, they want the same thing. I'm 65, I don't want to mow my yard, I don't want to move snow. I want the same thing that my 29-year-old kid, he doesn't know how to start a lawnmower. My God. If he ever owns a house, I'm scared. But, they want the same thing. And again, we saw a really unique project in one of our communities where they were putting the child care facility in right next door to the assisted living retirement complex. And what's happening is they have all these grandmas and grandpas who are coming over and rocking the babies for free. So it's working great. They're helping to alleviate and to provide this service that's not there. So we have to think outside the box. We have to bring all the partners together and the old models, just build a new model that works in your community to address the needs that you need to have met.
Thank you. Can we have a round of applause for our Thanks again to Dubuque for allowing us to be here. Thanks to Fresh Deli, who did the catering this morning. Thanks to Quinn Pettifer, Sharon Keys, Kelly Buchanan for doing the work at all these events, and they come here early so I don't have to. And thank you to you. Thanks for coming. We'll see you in September. It is 65 degrees outside. Amazingly, you think we're in Toronto. Thank you.